But when we look at Watch Dogs Legion, Ubisoft appears to lack any and all confidence in the product that they have. So much so that they seem to have doubled back on one of the key features, something which amazingly hasn't received a lot of press coverage, but something I want to make sure everyone's aware of, because I was not. Here's the thing, Watch Dogs Legion has had me engrossed since the very first time that they announced it and started showing off bits and pieces of it because it's remarkably ambitious. I mean, just the premise that you're going to be able to play as any NPC in the game world is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you think about a game like Watch Dogs 2 or Grand Theft Auto 5, and you just think about how many NPCs you pass while driving down a single street. The idea of you being able to play as any one of those characters, make them your primary character, use them in all cutscenes so that their voice actually participates and their voice actor completes all the same scenes as you would have seen if you had kept another character. All of these things are absolutely ridiculous and boggle the mind to comprehend, which is why I've been so interested. Now, obviously the concern has been and will continue to be whether or not they can manage high quality while going for this level of quantity. It's been the age-old problem for Ubisoft. They tend to go big, and when you go big, you don't tend to keep up the quality as compared to a company that aims a little smaller, a little more narrow. Some company like, for instance, Rocksteady, who made all the Batman Arkham games, famously Batman Arkham Knight, which in my opinion is one of the most detailed and incredible game maps that's ever been created. And it's because they were able to focus on individual areas, polish the living hell out of them, and they were able to create one of the best looking games in all of history, but also one of the best animated games that's ever been released as well. Speaking of Rocksteady, it looks like I was actually right, and they are working on a Suicide Squad game, which is funny because I predicted that like a year ago at this point, and I've been throwing it out in streams for a year and a half, 2 years. So it looks as though I'm psychic. Or it was just the most obvious option, and it's something that any dummy could have predicted, but nonetheless, I'll take credit. The point is, I've wanted to check out Watch Dogs Legion for a while at this point. And so when Ubisoft approached me and asked me if I would like to play the game for 3 to 4 hours, I jumped on it and said, hell yeah, let me know when and where. Now, for a plethora of reasons, I wasn't able to get this video out sooner. I just started a new job. It's very, very busy. I had to travel out of the state to go to a family thing in Minnesota, so it's been a whole thing. The point is, I was able to play the game, and I have all of the footage, and I spent a lot of time really pondering it, thinking about it, and I think I'm ready to share my thoughts. You see, Watch Dogs Legion has to be the most insecure game I have ever seen in my life. They are well aware that they're doing something remarkably ambitious, which you would think would breed confidence, or at the very least arrogance in some capacity. But no, they are insecure with regards to every single decision that's put in the game, whether it's a cutscene that you see, whether it's the writing of the actual dialogue, to the bizarre 5-star wanted system lifted straight from Grand Theft Auto. Everything in here screams insecurity, screams that Ubisoft didn't know if what they had was good enough to lean on heavily. You see, when you have a really good game system, you can put a lot of weight down on it, and if it's steady enough, it can hold that weight and support a pretty massive and impressive structure. I mean, think of any building. You have to lay a strong foundation between you can put up all the fancy stuff that everybody compliments. I mean, you go and you tour a castle, everybody talks about how pretty all of the stained glass windows are and all of the masonry, but if you don't have a good foundation underneath all of that, the thing's gonna collapse. With regards to gaming, you have to have a really strong base in terms of gameplay for the whole artifice to fit upon. Otherwise, it crumbles under its own weight. In a game like Breath of the Wild, for instance, you can go off and follow the main quest all the way to its conclusion without taking any breaks to explore, or you can completely ignore the main quest and go and do your own thing for 100 hours and then start the main quest at the end of that journey. whatever you want to do, the game will support it, and it will still be fun because the game systems are so robust that you can do pretty much anything. Or if we stick with the Grand Theft Auto 5 example, really, most of the Grand Theft Auto games are built so well that most people's memories of playing the game aren't going through the main missions. It's actually going and exploring or playing online and racing using systems that were technically supposed to be complementative to the story, but ended up being so fantastically well done that they made for their own fun game by itself. Now listen, every game wants to be Grand Theft Auto 5, every game wants to be Breath of the Wild. I understand that those are rough comparisons to make, and that's not lost on me whatsoever. The reason I bring those up is because those are examples of games that are ridiculously confident. They're not arrogant, because arrogance usually is confidence bred out of a lack of experience. Basically, there's nothing backing it up, whereas confidence is arrogance that's been earned. They're two sides of the same coin, but in one case, it's just standing by itself, and in the other, it's supported by experience and knowledge of knowing what they're doing, knowing that what they have is worth a damn. But when we look at Watch Dogs Legion, Ubisoft appears to lack any and all confidence in the product that they have. So much so that they seem to have doubled back on one of the key features, something which amazingly hasn't received a lot of press coverage, but something I want to make sure everyone's aware of, because I was not. You see, when I started playing the demo that Ubisoft sent over for Watch Dogs Legion, I was expecting there to be permadeath. Basically, you go and you recruit NPCs in the world, and if they happen to die, they're dead, and you have to go recruit somebody else, or you have to use another recruit that you previously had. And once all of your recruits had died and you didn't have any backups at all, it was game over, Red Rover, and you had to either revert to a previous save 5 hours before or something, or just start the game over again. I was kind of excited for that because it would force you to go explore and carefully choose your operators. It would raise the stakes of any and all combat sequences. But Ubisoft doubled back on that, and now it's just an option. It's basically a difficulty slider, and if you want permadeath and if you want to play hardball, you can do that, but most people are probably not going to experience the game in that way. I didn't with the demo. They had the demo set to a normal difficulty mode where every time that a character died, they were simply sent to hospital or to jail and were arrested, and you had to wait around 20 real-life / in-game gameplay minutes in order to get back with that character. It really lowered the stakes and made it so you could just start screwing around and not giving a crap, which initially is fun because you just go around with an old man and jump off of a building or something stupid like that. But once you pause and you reflect on what this has done, is it's turned the entire game into a joke. One of the coolest features is now completely undermined. Now, I think there were a few parts and elements to this. I don't think it was as simple as Ubisoft just wanted to appeal to as broad a community as they possibly could, which a lot of people will probably say it's just Ubisoft being greedy. They didn't want to take a stand and be brave and put out this feature that could be polarizing or that could push away more casual gamers that don't like that much of a challenge. Whatever the case, that seems like the obvious answer, or at least the easy answer that's present and ripe for the plucking, but I think there's more to it. You see, when you play Watch Dogs Legion, you get a feel very quickly that the game is not as robust in its foundation as you would hope. The gameplay isn't as steady as it needs to be in order to justify the expansive world, character variety, etc. that they've provided. What I mean is that if you have permadeath in a game, you need to make damn sure that all of the gameplay elements that could affect the player character are fair and are robust. In other words, you need to make sure that if your character dies and goes away forever, that it was your fault. It was the player's fault. That they made a mistake, and this is the punishment that's due for that mistake. If you have glitches in your game, if you have a lack of polish, if the shooting mechanics are super clunky, or if there's lag and all sorts of weird things, hitbox issues, if that's present in your game, that means that your character could die and it wouldn't be your fault. That's not fun. That feels cheap. It feels wrong. It makes you feel as though you were robbed of a good time, which in many ways you were. This is one of those cases where a game such as Dark Souls has to be built in a very specific and carefully structured way. If you're going to have a game that's difficult and that expects a lot of the player, you need to make sure that all damage, all death, all punishment inflicted upon the player is fair and is justified. You can't have this weird double standard where there's clipping, where there's AI issues. It has to be polished, at least insofar as that gameplay mechanic is concerned. But playing Watch Dogs Legion, let me tell you what, the shooting is bad. And I'm very thankful that Ubisoft let me try the game, and I don't want them to think that I'm not grateful or that I don't appreciate. I also got to play Valhalla, which I'll be talking about in an upcoming video. And I have thoughts on that game as well, but with Watch Dogs Legion, it seems as though Ubisoft might have bitten off a little more than they could chew. Now, it could very well be that Ubisoft has polished all of this stuff out and that the gameplay and the gunplay mechanics are going to be fantastic. It's going to feel smooth and great, and it's going to be worth all of the time and effort. It's going to be Fortnite 2.0, whatever the hell you want to say, to communicate some sort of broad and vast success in gameplay. But I'm not super confident that that's the case, because usually your core gameplay mechanisms are established before the map has even really started to be created. If you go and you watch any sort of documentary on game development, or if you talk to developers themselves, they'll be honest and they say, well, yeah, we usually have artists working on the world and working on some quest line stuff, but most of the team is working on how the gameplay is going to work, putting it in dummy little worlds and making sure that everything runs smoothly before spending all the time to create levels to put the player into. They need to make sure that the gameplay mechanisms that the level design is trying to complement all works together fluidly. Really, I think what we have here is what we have. And that's clunky gameplay. It's kind of terrible voice acting, to be completely honest, but nonetheless, it's still pretty impressive because you can recruit any NPC in the game. They do have voices that sound unique skills and backstories. Some of them are really funny and quirky. My favorite while playing was this old man. He just runs around. He doesn't actually run. His top speed is capped super low. It was actually kind of funny playing as him, trying to get through some different areas filled with guards and cops. But like with all of these characters, they all have their own voices. Some of them are doubled down with voice modulators and things. So you hear some duplicate voices that are close. One's a little higher pitched, one's a little lower. But a lot of characters sound unique, look unique, feel unique, play uniquely. But even so, the question is whether or not that can justify a $60 title if the rest of the game is a little lacking. And at this point, I'm just not entirely sure. I would love to talk about the intro of the game because there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens, to be perfectly honest, but I'm not allowed to share that with you. It was one of the few restrictions that Ubisoft placed on this demo. They said we could not share any footage or information about the opening title sequence, which is around 5-10 minutes long. I don't recall exactly how long it was, but it was a hot minute, and it had some cool cutscenes and narrative stuff that was intriguing and interesting. But as to whether or not they can maintain that level quality, I'm not sure if they can do that across an entire game. So all told, I'm not really sure what to think of Watch Dogs Legion, but I'm hopeful. I hope that they get a lot of this sorted out. I hope to be playing it early for a review, and I want it to be good, but you know, there's only so much you can do at the end of the day. And this is one of the things with early adoption of any sort of technological product. In this case, Ubisoft's doing something new, something revolutionary in many ways. It's the first phase and generation of this technology, and the fact that it's a little clunky would be expected and is expected, to be perfectly honest. The fact that it runs as well as it does is kind of amazing in and of itself. But just like with the original iPad, the original iPhone, original PC computers, everything, sometimes it takes a couple generations before things get polished enough that they really work the way that the designers initially intended them to. And this might be one of those cases where Watch Dogs Legion is a little rough around the edges and a little clunky, but every time they release a sequel, they polish it up and eventually it ends up being something fantastic. But unfortunately, my time with the game left me a little more concerned than confident in the end product. But I'm going to give the game a shot at launch, hopefully with a review copy, like I said, so I can get it early, see what it's like, and share that news with you guys, so that you don't put 60 hard-earned dollars up and find out that it's terrible. Hopefully I can save you that money if it is, but also hopefully I can convince you to get it if it ends up being something truly fantastic. But that's all from me. I have a kitten here if you would like to meet her. Nikki, bring the kitten into camera. This is Hermione. This is what you came here to see. I'm sorry, babe. Look at the camera. Look at the camera. This is Hermione. She's 2 months old. She's sniffing the camera. I love you all. We'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye.